Hi and welcome to this video. If you're new here, my name is Ilse and I like to read diverse books, or at least I like to think that I do. So today we're going to be putting that to the test by seeing how many countries I've read from in 2024. I read 82 books last year and today we're going to see how many countries those books were from. So I have this map on which are all the countries in the world, and I can color them in when I've read a book from that country. So hopefully at the end of this video, this map will be colored in and we can see how many countries I've read from and which countries I've yet to read from. So maybe I can focus my reading more on those countries in 2025. Now, if you want to play along, you can let me know all the countries you've read from in the comments. I would love to hear them. So let's get my Goodreads and let's get started. Okay, the first book that I read in 2024 was Like Water for Chocolate by Laura Esquivel. This book is all about Mexican culture, so I assume the author is also from Mexico. So we're going to be coloring in Mexico because it was the first country that I've read from. What I especially love about reading from so many countries is that you get to see the culture and the traditions and the recipes from that country. This book included all of those things, and that's why I really enjoyed it. If you want to read a book about Mexican culture, I would highly recommend this one. It was very enjoyable, but the author also gives her own commentary on those traditions, so I thought it was a very interesting read. The next country that I've read from was the UK. First I read Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights, and then I read multiple books by Virginia Woolf. I'm not going to count duplicates, I'm just going to count it as one for the country. Then the next book that I read was If on a Winter's Night, a Traveler by Italo Calvino, and he is Italian. So we're going to color in Italy, which already gives us 2 countries in Europe, so that's going well. Then I read a lot of books for university, but we're not going to count these for the challenge. Then I read The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas, who is a French author. And this was one of the most enjoyable reads of the year. I actually think I read a lot of French and German authors this year, so we're going to see that. Then I read Elena Knows by Claudia Pinheiro, and I think this author is from Argentina. So we're going to color in Argentina. This is also kind of a geography challenge for me. I think I know my countries. The next one is We Should All Be Feminist by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I'm so sorry for butchering that. I actually don't know where she's from, so I have to search that. She is from Nigeria, so we're going to color in Nigeria. Then next is Nervous Conditions by Tsitsi Danganronga, who is from Zimbabwe. Then I read Komi Can't Communicate, which was my first manga. I read a lot of manga this year, but this was my first one. And most manga is of course from Japan, so we can color in Japan. Then I read Beauty is a Wound, which was a very difficult and devastating book on a very dark part of Indonesian history. I did not enjoy this book at all, unfortunately. I would love to read something different from Indonesia that I hopefully enjoy much more. So I'll have to look into that. Then I read my first Sarah J. Maas, and she is American. So we're gonna color in the USA. Then we have more Rilke, which is an author that I love, and he is German. Let's see. Then we have a lot of English, French, American, Japanese, a lot of duplicates. Then I read The Dog Who Dared to Dream, which is by a Korean author, so we're gonna color in South Korea. Oh, this is a difficult one. I read As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow by Zulfa Katu. I hope I'm saying that correctly, but this book takes place in Syria, and it actually talks about the war in Syria, but the author herself is Canadian. So it feels a little bit wrong to count Canada when the book is all about Syria. My theory is that authors bring a part of their own culture and where they grew up into the story. So with that theory, I would have to take off Canada. This might be a mistake, but I think I am gonna color in Canada for this one. But I would love to read more books that are actually from Canadian authors that are about Canada. This might be a mistake. Let me know in the comments what you would have done in this situation. But I think I'm gonna say Canada for this one. A lot of the books that I read are not specifically about the country where the author is from. For example, fantasy books, they usually take place in a fictional world, so they're not even about any country on this map. But I think the country that the author has grown up in and the culture that they have really influences the book a lot. I actually think that if you would give two authors the same premise for the book, that they would be so different, not just because of the author, but also because of where they grew up. I think where we grew up influences us a lot. So that's what I love about reading from so many places. You get to see the influence the country has on the author, and also what attitude the author has towards certain things and how that changes based on where they live. So yeah, that's what I like so much about this. And by creating this map, I can also see which countries I haven't read from, so I can focus more on those countries. Let's continue. Okay, this year I read These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, which I didn't really enjoy, but the book took place in China, but I'm not sure if Chloe Gong is actually Chinese. Okay, so Chloe Gong is actually from New Zealand, but the book is about China. So again, this is a very difficult one. If I'm going with the same thing that I did for As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow, then I have to put New Zealand. But it feels wrong because the book is not about New Zealand at all. She was born in China, but then she moved to New Zealand. This is difficult. I think I want to put China for this one. I think if I do this, I would have to change the Canadian one as well. Okay, so I think I'm going to change it up. I'm going to pick Syria for As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow, and then China for These Violent Delights, because both of these authors have heritage from that country, and the book is only taking place in that country. I feel like if the authors had nothing to do with that country and just wrote about it, I would have picked the other country. But it just feels wrong to pick New Zealand for a book that took place in China. Then I read two books by Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey. And of course we don't know who Homer is. We don't know if he lived, if it was a man or a woman, but we assume that Homer was from Greece. Now, of course, the Trojan War, which Homer wrote about in the Iliad, takes place in Troy, and Troy is found to be in Turkey. But the Trojan War did not happen while Homer was alive. So from my understanding, it's most likely that Homer was from Greece. So I'm gonna click Greece for that one. Then I read The Age of Magic by Ben Okri. Okay, Ben Okri is also from Nigeria, which we have already colored in. So we're going to leave that as it is. Oh, oh, this is awful. Then I read White Nights by Dostoevsky, which is a book of less than 100 pages. But Dostoevsky was a Russian author. So we're gonna click off entire Russia because of a less than 100-page book. That is just awful. I am redeeming myself though, because I am currently reading Anna Karenina by Tolstoy, which is a much larger book, and I think it reflects a lot more of Russia itself. Maybe I'm doing Russia a little bit more justice with that one. Then I read Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan, who is Irish. So we're gonna click off Ireland. And then the last book I read in 2024 was The Dollmaker of Krakow by R.M. Romero, which is about Poland, but the author is Jewish Latina. Okay, how am I gonna classify this? R.M. Romero lives in Miami Beach, but she's Jewish Latina, and the book is about Poland. Okay, this is too difficult to classify. It doesn't say anywhere where she was born, so I'm just gonna assume it was America, because she lives in Miami Beach. So I think this was it. I hope I'm not missing any. I think the most striking thing about this map is that I did not read any book from the Netherlands, which is kind of awful because I am Dutch. I think I should at least read one Dutch book every year. I did read books in Dutch, but no books by a Dutch author. So that's kind of bad. So that's definitely something I have to keep in mind for 2025, is to read more books by Dutch authors. Of course, I have read books from Dutch authors in my life, but this map is just reflecting 2024. So let's count, shall we? I have read in 2024 from 17 different countries, which I'm really happy with. Of course, compared to all the countries that there are in the world, it's not so much, but yeah, I'm really happy with that number. I read, surprisingly, a lot from Asia. I would say I didn't expect to read so much from Asia. I didn't read any from Scandinavia or Iceland or Greenland. So that might be something to look into for 2025. I would love to read from more countries in Africa because Africa is so big. There are so many different countries in Africa that I feel like if you would read from Northern Africa, it would be a completely different experience than if you would read from Southern Africa. I'm really happy with this. I am going to save this, so hopefully we can, at the end of 2025, look back on this map and color in a lot more countries. And then hopefully in a couple years time, this map will be primarily red and I can say that I've read from a lot of countries. I would love to know how many countries you've read from in 2024. Please let me know in the comments. Also, if you're from any of these countries that I haven't read from, please let me know a recommendation from your country in the comments so I can read that. For now, I want to thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you liked it and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!